The reality is that public support for Ukraine is very, very strong, and increasingly the pressure just kept growing and growing. And there was also a petition in the Congress to force a vote on this, even without the approval of Mike Johnson. That would be a huge degradation to his own leadership. That would show that he is not able to control even his own party.
Welcome to the Black Sky. My name is Piotr Mateusz Bobołowicz, and our guest today is Jason Smart, American political analyst, political scientist, and advisor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Great to see you.
I never know what to say when I'm speaking with people with such a time zone difference. Let's get to the topic. Yesterday, very important voting in the House of Representatives in American Congress. The bill on aid for Ukraine got finally voted and accepted, but nonetheless, it sparked a lot of emotions, a lot of controversies among congressmen.
Yes, finally it got voted on. It's been about half a year since the last time that Congress voted on aid for Ukraine. And it's a very dramatic half a year. It's been a top political issue. It caused the downfall of the former Speaker of the House, in fact. And so the fact that yesterday there was finally a vote, Speaker Mike Johnson, who initially had opposed giving aid to Ukraine, relented, and he allowed for there to be a vote for this specific aid package. And today it will be considered in the Senate.
Why so many controversies? Why so many emotions? Why so many Republicans voted against?
So it's a good question. And there's a very important aspect to this, which is that the vast majority of the Congress understands why it is important to send this assistance to Ukraine. And so, first, the reason was domestic. It wasn't international. It's not due to sympathy for Russia that people did not want to vote on this. It was because a lot of Republicans argued, and public opinion polling does support this, that the vast majority of Americans think that the problem with our border is significant and they'd like to see that addressed. And so Republicans going into elections understood that it was very important to talk about immigration. The United States has, we don't know exactly how many, but around 15 million illegal immigrants. There's been over 100,000 Russians, for instance, who have been arrested trying to cross from the Mexican border into the United States just in the past 3 years. There's been tons of people that have been arrested who were from China, from North Korea, from Iran. Known terrorists have been arrested on the border. We've, just in the first few months of 2022, they arrested 18 known members of the FSB trying to illegally enter into the United States or seeking asylum in the United States via the Mexican border. And as a result of this, Americans are very concerned by the border issue. And so the Republicans thought it was a good strategy to say, let's address the border, our own domestic security first, before assisting Ukraine. Now, that strategy didn't work out for them. And so in the end, I think the majority of the Republicans who voted no for support for Ukraine yesterday were not because they support Russia or did not support Ukraine. Simply, they realized that it was a very easy thing for them to vote no. The law would still pass. Ukraine would still get the assistance. It wouldn't affect anything, but it would allow them to justify to their constituents that they were prioritizing the border ahead of Ukraine.
Do you think Mike Johnson will lose his post of the Speaker?
I think it's very unlikely that Mike Johnson will lose his post. The Democrats were willing to make a deal with Johnson that they would not vote to remove him, even if his own party tried to remove him. And given the number of votes that he would have in the Republican Party plus the Democratic Party, the reality is that Mike Johnson will be able to keep his seat most likely.
You said that today Senate will vote. This interview will be published probably after the vote, but I think we are not expecting any problems in the Senate.
We do not expect any problems in the Senate. The reality is that the Senate has been much more supportive of Ukraine than the House has, and is a lot less complicated as a political terrain. So we expect that the Senate will pass the assistance for Ukraine, and then it'll go immediately to the president, who will sign it either the same day or the next day, and then the aid package to Ukraine will begin to be utilized.
Do you think that Ukraine will receive finally ATACMS?
Yes, actually, that is sort of part of the good news, is that the Republicans now realize, since they're doing what the White House requested 6 months ago, that they have to take a new posture. And it looks like what part of that new posture is that they're going to argue that Biden has not been sufficiently strong in supporting Ukraine with giving it assistance such as ATACMS, which will allow it to strike long-distance objects such as the Crimean Bridge, the Kerch Bridge. This means that Ukraine will now have the ability to strike from much further distances concentrations of Russian soldiers, Russian military technologies, as well as to better defend its own soldiers by not needing to send them so close to the front.
And what with those objections of the United States against attacks on the targets inside of Russian territory, such as refineries?
Well, the White House has an obvious reason that it's against the attack on the refineries, which is, as I said, they're worried about U.S. elections coming and fuel prices increasing. But I think that they were so ridiculed about that by Republicans as well as Democrats, who said that was absurd, that Ukraine needs to defend itself, that I think that Ukraine will, one, continue to do it. But two, I think that there's also part of a strategy that the White House had in saying that. The White House understands that it needs to show Russia that it's not directly involved in attacking Russia. And so, if they've made that public that they've asked the Ukrainians to not do that, and Ukrainians continue to do that, it gives plausible deniability to the White House. So it can tell Russia, listen, we're not the ones telling the Ukrainians to do this. We're not assisting with this. This is all on them. And I think that's a positive for the United States.
What happened that changed so much Mike Johnson's and other Republicans' position on this Ukraine aid bill?
Well, I think the Ukraine aid bill in the eyes of Mike Johnson was something that he would have preferred not to have to deal with. The reality is that public support for Ukraine is very, very strong. And increasingly, the pressure just kept growing and growing. And there was also a petition in the Congress to force a vote on this, even without the approval of Mike Johnson. That would be a huge degradation to his own leadership. That would show that he is not able to control even his own party. And so it was strategically wiser for him to kind of deal with the Democrats that would guarantee his position, that they would not remove him as Speaker, while at the same time allowing for this vote to take place, which, as we saw, the majority of Democrats and the majority of Republicans supported, or were at least not opposed to.
Johnson mentioned some intel, and he said that he trusts intel. And do you think that really they showed him something that he understood? It's now the moment we need to act. We have to act to prevent something big.
I don't think so. I mean, a lot of people in the United States who are working in national security have said that Ukraine is a very difficult position, including the members of the House Intelligence Committee have said that it looks like Ukraine will, to suffer a defeat and could actually lose the war even this year if the aid from the United States did not come through. So at that point, it became increasingly a, let's say, hot potato, a difficult position for the Republicans to deal with. They don't want to take responsibility for Ukraine losing the war or Russia winning the war. That would be a huge loss, and the American public would be very unforgiving about that. So strategically, it was much wiser to give Ukraine assistance now, to no longer treat Ukraine like a political game, which it had been treated as all issues are in the United States. The border or anything else is always treated as for political interest, out of political interest. But in this case, I think that they realized there was no longer that option. It was necessary to take action to support Ukraine.
And what with Donald Trump? He was very vocal about his against the aid for Ukraine, about against even aid to some NATO member allies in case if this aid is needed. And right now he slightly changed his position. He's at least not opposing directly this bill.
Well, Donald Trump had argued that it was okay to give the aid to Ukraine, but it should be given in the form of a loan. As he said, the loan could be indefinite, that is paid back over 500 years if that was agreed to, with zero interest even, but that it should be given as a loan rather just as a gift. And I actually, to be honest with you, I think that's sort of a fair position because that would convince a lot of Republicans who are saying, well, why aren't we financing these other projects? You could say, listen, the fact is we're not financing, we're simply giving a loan. And that justifies for them, their constituents, that it is not just free money. It's not just their tax dollars being given away as a gift. Rather, it's money that will eventually come back to the United States while at the same time protecting American national security abroad by supporting Ukraine.
So do you think that if Donald Trump wins the elections, he won't stop the aid to Ukraine? He will help Ukraine, will keep helping Ukraine win against Russia, or will just abandon Ukraine, as many people said before that he will do?
I think Donald Trump, there's two different things we have to analyze. And we saw that when he was the president. There's what Donald Trump would like to do, and there's what Donald Trump is sort of forced to do by the nature of American politics. So I think, ideologically, he doesn't care about Ukraine. I think that he does have a preference for Vladimir Putin as a person. He seems to idolize him. At the same time, he's so commonly attacked in the American press as being considered pro-Russian that for him, it would be very politically difficult to actually do something that supported Russia. That would only bolster the arguments that his opponents have made. So I think that Donald Trump is going to be sort of forced to give Ukraine assistance just to show that it's not true that he's pro Russian. At the same time, he would need to, and he can't afford to. Let's be honest, Congress is probably going to be Democratic after elections. The Senate might be Democratic as well. And if it is, he has to work with Congress. And so there will be some sort of a deal made to continue supporting Ukraine, even if he personally doesn't really care about this issue.
Some sources in Poland, media in Poland, point out to a recent visit of Polish President Andrzej Duda to Donald Trump. They met, they spoke for quite some time. And do you think it played some role in this slight shift in Trump's position on Ukraine, or it was just some courtesy meeting?
It was probably mostly just a courtesy meeting, but I don't think it was hurtful. It was probably helpful, if anything, because the more that Donald Trump hears from people that this is a real issue, this is not just a political game in the United States as he probably thinks of it as, but that this is something that has actual global effect, is a positive. We know that Donald Trump has historically not had a huge interest in international relations. His presidency did have some successes with that, specifically with North Korea. But in general, Donald Trump's primary focus and the reason people vote for him is what he does domestically in the United States. So his interest level as a whole and what's going on in Europe or Eastern Europe, Ukraine, I think is quite minimal.
Let's hope we'll not need to see if Donald Trump will keep aiding Ukraine after the elections. Let's hope the war is over until the time we'll see who's the next US president. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.